Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again from Film Fanatic headquarters. It is 10:55 on a Sunday. Nice, rainy, kind of overcast, lazy Sunday afternoon or Sunday morning, I should say. Pretty nice. It was a beautiful day yesterday. I had a gig outside, and it was pretty spectacular outside. I was really surprised. We had a gig right on the water, right in Camden, and it was a really cool event. There was a lot of people there, and but I thought it was going to be freezing. I really thought, you know, it was going to be super chilly. It was right on the wharf in Camden, so I brought a bunch of layers, and it was actually hot. Like at one point, I was wearing a T-shirt. It was pretty fabulous. Usually the day before, I had a gig and it was outside, and it was again. And I mean, the weather for this year and this fall has been just spectacular. Every day has just been, you know, amazing. And that day, Saturday was so windy. It was super windy, but it got chilly. It got chilly later on in the day. It did also after we got done playing, which was about 4 o'clockish or so. But and then but it was a beautiful, absolutely gorgeous day. And after about 6 or 7 o'clock last night, it started raining, and we got a lot of rain last night. So it's like continuing to rain, but kind of a nice day. Again, a great day to watch movies. But again, isn't isn't every day a good day to watch movies, or every night a good night to watch movies? So today's show is going to be, again, this is like I've been on this super hardcore kick of revisiting and rewatching the entire Friday the 13th franchise. I've done multiple shows on all of these movies, but again, I started watching them again. I had this craving last week, or probably a couple of weeks ago now. I had this like craving to want to watch these movies again, and so I was like, "Yeah, fuck it, let's do it," and started watching it. And last night I finished part four, which is the final chapter, which is my overall favorite movie. It's always been the case, and it's always been the case ever since I was a kid till now. Some movies have really grown on me, though. I will say the later ones have, and then also the Jason Goes to Hell is one that's really grown on me. I didn't really like that a lot when I was a kid. Jason Lives, which is I think part six in the series. That one I think is amazing. It's really funny because I remember seeing that movie as a little kid in the theater, and then I always thought it was okay. I never really, I don't know, it was never one of the movies I got the most excited by. And then when I bought this amazing box set, I got all the movies here. I bought this a few years back. It's the full collection of the entire Friday 13th franchise. When I bought this whole series, again, I've since I bought this collection, I've watched it multiple times. And one of the things, like I had seen part six quite a few times, um, Jason Lives, and I remember, yeah, again, I saw that in the theater when I was a little kid. I uh, watched it again, and I just fell in love with it. Uh, it's one of my favorite movies in the franchise. I think it's really different. It's much more of it's still a slasher movie, obviously, but it's got way more of a classic kind of monster movie vibe to it, like a Universal monster movie, and I love that movie. So it's a close. It might even be tied now with the final chapter. Um, so, but today's show. So again, I've been rewatching, and Friday 13th is my favorite franchise. For me, it might sound funny, but for me, it's like comfort food to watch this series. There's something about it. It's obviously very, very nostalgic, but I think the movies still kick ass. I finished last night watching the final chapter. I just think they kick ass, and they're great. They're entertaining as hell. Great kills, great atmosphere. And they're they they just they just put you in this cool state of mind of like, if you want good gory slasher movies, this is it. And I think, again, the movies are really consistent. I think you can watch any of them by themselves. I do think you can. You kind of get a gist, in the backstory of everything. In the beginning of a lot of these films, but they're just great. I enjoy them more now than I ever did. It's it's total escapism, and I'm gonna finish out these movies. Thinking about, I have today off, and I'm just gonna kind of chill out and relax. But I was thinking about going to Bull Moose because it's kind of a nice rainy day, and even though I'm in the midst of watching these other movies, it's always great to have backup movies. Um, I get pretty inundated. I buy a lot more movies now, and this year I've been really beefing up my collection. I really love it, and then I've been buying more music too, so that's another thing. So we'll see. But last night I finished watching Friday 13th Part 2, which is a continuation of this amazing and glorious franchise. It is the first, the emergence of the Jason Voorhees character wearing the classic hood, which, again, I saw this, saw so many, saw all of these movies when I was a kid, and this one always, I always loved this one. Again, it's gotten better over time for me. I always loved it, but I don't know. The other movies I always appreciate a little bit more, especially where Jason gets on, where he adapts and starts using the hockey mask. That was always where I was, totally sold. But I think this movie's really good. It's got the armchair scene in this film. The armchair, I like to think of it, or I should say, the wheelchair kill scene is, I think, one of the best in the franchise. It's really good. It's really frightening, and I remember that scene always scared the shit out of me as a kid. And if you've seen this movie, which I hope you have, and you should, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's such a brutal scene, and it's really frightening, and the way it's set up, and the rain, and again, I love this movie. Again, it's a total cheesy ripoff kind of continuation thing of kind of regurgitating the same thing, but then it goes into different directions. And I think the other films, after you get out of once you get into part three, I think there are some, for what this franchise is or what it has to offer. I think there are some, new new ideas introduced, some new characters. Tommy, the Tommy character, I think that's a big shift. So, especially in the final chapter, but I love. I mean, it's a fantastic movie. Part two. I think it's a really great sequel. It's you get a pretty good sense of who Jason Voorhees is, and it's funny. As I was watching chapter three last night, or no, chapter four, the final chapter. It occurred to me again about discussions I've had a lot in the past with people about kind of the bad the views that a lot of people have of slasher movies. Where they're basically movies just about murder and mayhem, and especially nowadays it's been a thing of where I hear about it a lot, and I've gotten in discussions about it where uh, these movies are just they're misogynistic movies, and or slasher movies in general are just misogynistic, shit shows of where men are living out their fantasies of killing women, and it's like it's condoning violence against women and all this stuff, and it's hilarious because I've always thought this, but after watching the final chapter last night, kind of a light went off in my brain where I was like, it's so hilarious that these movies get so shit on by people who are, if you love genre film, genre films, and especially horror films, like, it's your thing. And usually the fans, like, I think fans that are into this genre, the slasher genre, the exploitation genre, the low budget horror genre, they're pretty dedicated. They're pretty serious. They're in it to win it. They're pretty knowledgeable about the about that particular genre or this particular genre. There's a lot of love. They buy a lot of the movies. They're big time collectors. So it's tapping into that market. The people are, the fans of these films, myself included, are really, really into it and dedicated to it, and they really have a passion for it. And so that's a thing. But I think people on the outside, I think generally, like with a lot of these genre films, I think it's either you have two fractions. I think you have the people who are like me, who are totally into it and just totally entertained by it and just feel all kinds of passion about it, in every way. And then you have other people who are like, you know, to a degree condemning of it, or saying that it's just total garbage, or that it's either, again, like I've had that discussion where I've had all of these relatively heated debates with my girlfriend, where we've talked about, like, she basically won't ever watch, or has no, doesn't give credit to any slasher movie, doesn't even acknowledge them as really movies, and says basically they just, are all about misogyny and violence against women, and that it's, a social kind of statement, especially, during the time when a lot of these movies came out, of how men treated women, in the 70s and 80s predominantly. And it's still a prevailing attitude now that men have against women. And I completely disagree. I've had this debate many times with people and my girlfriend at the time, around this whole thing. And after watching final chapter, I realized, wow, it's so funny, because it's like, at the end of the day, in every one of these movies, and in regards to Friday 13th, and I also feel there's a shit ton of other slasher movies where this happens. Um, at the end of the day, it's a woman who is, it's a female character who is one of the leads, who ends up more or less saving the day, who is the hero of the story, who ends up like kicking ass at the end and kind of saving the day, or killing the villain, or killing the killer. At the end of the day, it happens. Well, it happens without a doubt in every one of these movies. It's always the character who ends up kicking the most ass, survives through all of the worst kinds of scenarios, and ends up killing the killer, is always a woman at the end of these films. And it's hilarious, because realistically, you know, at face value, all the men in these movies are fucking dumb as shit. They're dumb as dumb as a door stopper, and they all fucking get killed, and they're stupid as hell, and they can't like problem solve. They always get themselves in really dumb situations. They all get slaughtered, and again, the body count for a lot of these films is, well, for me, is one of the reasons I love these films. I want to see a high body count. I want to see cool, creative kills. These films. The reason I love these films so much is that, and to see Tom Savini at his best. So I want to see that, and I want to see that, ultra violence, and be entertained by that, because it's fun. And it's a during this time when these films came out, it was, well, it's not a lost art form. I think practical effects are kind of, have become more popular, and it's been coming full circle, which I think is really great. I've seen some movies where practical effects are really, really awesome. In a Violent Nature is a new film that came out this year. That is an awesome movie, amazing practical effects. And The Substance with Demi Moore. Amazing practical effects. So it's coming back. But to me, that's what it is. I'm not a. I can't stand CGI. Only when it's done well, and I think nowadays it's used to a point of where to save costs on the production, and it just looks like shit, and it doesn't have that organic nature. But the thing is like these movies, you know, the body counts are high, but at the end of the day, the women are kicking ass, and there's always that kind of female hero at the end of the film, and if anything, like I don't look at these movies, and I don't look at slasher movies in general, and even to that matter, for that matter, maybe even like exploitation movies across the board. Even though I think they do, there are lots of films in the exploitation world that do kind of have do tackle serious subjects and that deal with maybe more adult kind of subjects, and do have they do have something to say. But for the most part, it's the world of schlock, so it's not really too heavy-handed in that department. And I definitely think with slasher films, there's not any real there is no social commentary to be said or to be read into. It's entertaining. It's entertainment, pure entertainment 101. But I think, ironically, if you're going to say that there is, say for the Friday 13th series, you're going to say that well they are talking about social issues. I would almost say that because of how this is a theme with the female lead kind of kicking ass or saving the day at the end of the film, because that is a constant theme in all of these films. You could almost look at it, even though I don't, but I think you could almost look at that as like an example of a social issue around female empowerment, and that men are smarter than guys. Just saying. But I don't. I think these movies are just super entertaining and fun as hell and pure escapism. And I think again, compared to, as far as just a franchise, compared to say all the franchises that are out there, you have the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, which is great. There's a lot of great movies in that. I That's a franchise I need to revisit and rewatch. Those are movies I grew up on, and I love those movies. But I don't know. It's not something I've like seeked out a lot, but I think they're good. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise is really mixed. There's some movies in that franchise that are just spectacular, and it's some that are just god awful. And I think it's the same thing with the Halloween franchise. I think there are some movies that are amazing, some movies that are just crap. But I think for again, that's why. And as far as newer franchises, like say the Saw franchise, I actually really like that franchise a lot. I think that's a good one. I think it's one of the better, more modern day franchises. It is um, a franchise that I don't know. I think I need to. I don't think I've done a show or a series of shows on all those movies, but I think they're pretty consistent. And I do like the Saw movies. I really like the last Saw movie. That was really really good. And I did a show on that. And then also like my favorite modern day franchise are the Purge films, which are just so awesome. I love those films to death, and the that's something I really want to get on Blu-ray. I have a couple of the movies, but love that franchise. That's my favorite modern day franchise. But my favorite kind of classic, nostalgic franchise overall is the Friday 13th franchise. I think it's just through and through consistent, super fun, just great. And this film, Chapter Two, which came out in '81, came out exactly a year after the original. Um, and it was spurred on because of the massive, massive, massive success of Friday 13th, the first movie, which was a movie that blew the blew the doors off of the indie horror world. Like it became this huge thing. One of the most influential. I honestly think if the franchise of the Friday 13th films didn't exist, and that especially that first seminal iconic movie, horror that we know today, and especially the slasher genre, would probably be incredibly different. I don't think it would be the same. You have those movies when it comes to the slasher genre, those key movies that are super important. You know, Halloween, of course, Friday 13th, of course. Halloween being came before was the first one that set off the that influenced the Friday 13th films. You have that those two obviously very important pivotal movies. And then before Halloween, you have Black Christmas, which really was the first film I feel that acted as a fully realized slasher film, where it really introduced this. That film introduced to the world of what a well executed, well planned slasher film can be or could be, and that movie acted as a real template for that. And I think Black Christmas is the probably the most seminal movie and the most important movie. I think that movie is not really well known, isn't well known enough, but that movie is the most probably pound for pound the most influential and definitely the most influential, I think, or it should be, even though I think people don't know about it like they should, but I think it's the most important. Obviously, the slasher genre came before that. There were films that had those tropes and that were quote unquote slasher films. I think even like Herschel Gordon Lewis, Blood Feast. I think that movie is a slasher movie in a lot of ways. So, but again, equally as important. But I think the slasher film Black Christmas didn't give birth to the genre. They did kind of exist before, but I think Black Christmas became a thing of where it was a fully realized, full on slasher film. It was 100% a like a bookmark or acted as a template as to how you make a good slasher movie with all of the classic tropes. And and I think for that reason, it's the most important one. So, but without those films, without any of these films, and since I'm talking about Friday the 13th, if Jason Voorhees was not a thing or a character, or Victor Miller and Sean, if Sean, Victor Miller and Sean Cunningham never had the idea to basically rip off Halloween, um, the the horror world would be, I think, significantly different, totally different landscape. It would obviously would still exist, and it would still be very popular, I'm sure. But I think it would be very, very different. I think it would be a very different kind of world. I think that I don't know. I don't think the slasher genre would be where it is today. I brought up In a Violent Nature, which is a movie that came out in 2024 and this year, and I just saw it recently, and I really love that movie. I think it's a really interesting and unique modern day take on this classic genre of the slasher film. It does something unique, but that movie is super, super influenced by. I think that movie is probably more influenced by the Friday 13th movies than any other more modern day slasher or even horror film that I've seen. It's very much it kind of borrows and steals from that movie, but but the way the story is told and the way it's kind of laid out is totally different, totally original. It has a totally different kind of approach, but the core story and even the character in the film is very, very different, or is very is incredibly influenced by the Friday 13th franchise. So, I don't think, again, if Friday 13th didn't exist, a film like that, which I think is one of the better, definitely one of the best movies I've seen this year, and probably the best slasher movie I've seen in a long time, the it would be it probably wouldn't have, if that was to come out, probably would be very different, but it might not even be considered a slasher film. So important films. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.